We open on some guys playing dice, though the dice looks more like Rubik's Cube pieces. Newcomer dice, I guess.
Not even the holidays change my luck.
Yeah, it really isn't this guy's lucky day, because he gets chased down and kidnapped by some guys in a car.
Will this one do?
Meanwhile, it's a newcomer holiday called the Day of Descent, where they celebrate their coming to Earth. Kind of like newcomer Thanksgiving, I guess. And everyone is at the Francisco house again.
May the earth stay firmly under your feet.
Right, Albert.
George, it's the Day of Descent. All our friends are here. I'm happy. Emily's excited. And even Buck, the alien without a cause, is smiling.
Alien without a cause. I love that. It's not the last time someone calls him that, by the way.
So you've been bugging me for weeks to show me this new Tri-Deck VCR unit of yours.
Tri-Deck VCR, very modern. So George has been excited about a particular friend showing up.
Oh, Matthew, I want you to meet two of our dear friends from the ship, Tom and Albert.
Don't tell me. Edison.
Ah, you've heard of my lighting store.
Oh wow, even Jill is here. Anyway, George makes an announcement.
As is Descent holiday tradition, to celebrate the day our ship landed, newcomers choose an Earthling to do special things for as a gesture of goodwill for liberating us.
Oh my god, that newcomer head balloon is killing me. It's right over Susan's head too, which looks even funnier.
The Francisco family would be honored if Matthew Sykes would serve as our Descent holiday dork.
Dork?
Suits him.
Dork is Cantonese for revealed one. Smile, it's an honor.
All right, what the hell? I guess I'm your dork.
I must show you my new Tri-Deck VCR.
But George seems more interested in hanging out with his newcomer friend. So now Kathy tells the story of the newcomer ship landing on Earth, while Emily does an interpretive dance.
And we pledge to embrace all Earth beings as our friends forever.
And this is what I've learned since we were released from quarantine.
Any episode with Emily is a good one. Meanwhile, George and Tom are alone, and something is just off about George.
What is it, Stanya?
Yeah, I believe this is the first time it's been mentioned on the show, but George's real name is Stanya, which it also was in the movie.
My true name is Stanya Sorens A. Sorens, well, Gesundheit.
I really like that name. It suits him. It sounds both strong and soft, just like George. Anyway, George brings up something from their past that is better left forgotten, according to Tom. But they get interrupted before they say what it is.
George, what is it?
It's nothing, Susan.
Later that night, George has a nightmare. Back on the ship, a sadistic guard is coming after someone named Rutra, who George is trying to protect. But we still don't know what this is about yet. The next morning, Matt comes to work to find that George has cleaned his desk.
I've alphabetized all the files, organized everything in your in and out baskets, disinfected your desk and your phone's mouthpiece. Now, you really shouldn't talk with your mouth full.
Very thoroughly.
It's customary to do a nice thing each day of the Descent season for the one being honored.
Even getting fresh donuts.
If that is what you desire.
Maybe being a dork won't be so bad.
Maybe don't say that quite so loud. After that, Albert comes into work hiding a pigeon under his jacket.
Oh, get that filthy thing out of here right now.
It's just a bird.
Yeah, it's not a bird, Einstein. It's a pigeon. They're disgusting creatures, flying bags of germs. Now get rid of it.
George suspects that the pigeon is Albert's dork, and he thinks that's sad.
You said I was a dork. How can a pigeon be a dork?
Only humans would be so arrogant as to assume such superiority. In our eyes, we're grateful to all of Earth's creatures.
Don't worry, Matt. You can be a dork, too. Anyway, they get called into Grazer's office and find out that there is a missing newcomer, the second one this week.
It looks bad at being your decent day and all.
Descent. Day of Descent.
Whatever.
I love how George smiles at Matt there. Our little Matt is growing up, isn't he?
A guy named Joe Comet.
I tried looking up Joe Comet to see if that was a reference. I could just find the name of a hypnotist and comedian, but he would have been starting out shortly after this show aired, so I guess it's coincidence. Anyway, they talk to Joe's wife, who says that he's a good man with a gambling problem, and he tends to borrow money from loan sharks.
Do you know this man's name?
Flack. Dion Flack. Two-bit money collector for the mob.
The loan shark in question is someone Matt has dealt with before.
Hey, Jan, how you doing? Threads are nice, but the face is just as ugly.
It turns out that Joe Comet does owe this guy money, but he hasn't seen him.
Why would I want somebody who owes me money to disappear? It's simple arithmetic. Here, paid, gone, by, boom, boom. You know what I mean?
Later, we find out where Joe Comet is. They drag him kicking and screaming to a chair.
I got $10 on this one!
He's pretty hairy for a newcomer. I guess a lot of actors weren't willing to shave their chests for a one-time part. The next day, Matt comes into work to find that George has gotten him a fresh donut.
Now this is a donut.
But George isn't in the holiday spirit. The bodies of the two missing newcomers have been found. They go to look at one of the bodies and...
No shotgun, not that pretty. You know, a newcomer is like a salsa tablet in the ocean? Somebody bored a hole in this guy's chest with a high-powered stream of salt water. I mean, it's like having acid sprayed right through your body. And from the look on his face, I'd say that he was awake during the whole thing.
George's flashback continues. Where Rutra is taken away.
Yo, George.
Afterwards, he excuses himself.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, you're usually the one turning a little green around the gills when you come down here sight.
He goes to see Tom.
Do you remember the way the bodies looked? Why, after they played? Do you remember?
Who knows what George is alluding to and doesn't like it.
George, please get out of the past. Wasn't the wound burned all the way through?
Yes! It was burned all the way through. Why do we have to relive it?
Because I think I have just seen such a body. I think the game is being played here on Earth.
Back at the station, Albert is taking care of his pigeon, which he tries to hide from Captain Grazer.
It was an accident, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I don't know how he got out, but...
Got out?
If I don't care for him, they will put him to sleep.
These things happen, Einstein. Lose the bird.
Come on, Brian.
He named the pigeon after Grazer.
Respect for Earth's creatures plays an important part in our Day of Descent ritual. In choosing a name for my Earth dork, I sought one that was worthy of such respect.
And suddenly he's a lot more understanding.
All right, hold it. Okay, look. You keep that thing in the cage, out of this office, and when that wing's back in service, he goes. You got it?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I promise.
Meanwhile, George returns to the station and tells Matt that the loan shark isn't behind the deaths. A newcomer is.
George, flax a lock.
Why must you always have the head of a pig?
I'm not the one being pig-headed here.
Why can't you look beyond your personal vendetta and consider the possibility that they might be disappearing for much bigger reasons?
Sounds hypocritical since George also has a personal vendetta, though he happens to be right. George finally comes clean about what this is all about.
On the ship, the overseers used to play this game. It was very much like the one you called Russian roulette. Comet's wounds, they closely resembled those of the slaves who lost this game.
You think this whacked-out game is going on now?
I'm not certain. It's just a strange feeling.
George, we're cops. We deal in facts, not feelings.
Yeah, facts don't care about your feelings, George.
You're just letting your milk-fed imagination get the better of you.
Matt suggests George knock off early.
Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just the season.
Matt mentions that a lot of humans hate the holidays as well.
I mean, have you ever seen the stats around Christmas time on suicide? Just something about all that happiness makes people go crazy.
Good night, Matthew.
Matt looks at what George was drawing, and we cut to the game being played, and another newcomer is being forced into the chair. He refuses to push the button.
Push it, you may live. If you don't, you will die. Now push it!
I guess if you don't get the salt water, you just get steam. So it fools you for a split second. God, what a horrible mindfuck. It's the other guy's turn, and he pushes without hesitation. Steam again. Once again, he hesitates, but pushes it because he has to. Yeah, this is a really fucked up episode. This is some Saw shit right here.
Miscanten, Bono.
Then it's revealed that the other guy, the reigning champion, is George's friend, Tom Edison. The next morning...
You Brian? Hey, it's Big Brian.
Aw, Grazer likes the pigeon now.
Yeah, sort of become one of the family. Hey, Captain.
Just make sure he doesn't make a mess.
Afterwards, Matt complains that George forgot his donut.
I couldn't get any sleep last night. I am sorry.
Oh, my fault, my fault. I thought you took this dork stuff seriously.
I forgot.
Laurel, Hardy, my office.
They're still more like the odd couple, but that works too. Anyway, they found another newcomer body.
It's just like comets. Salt water burns through the chest.
And George's flashback continues again. Rutra's dead body is dragged away.
Francisca? Francisca!
Matt confronts George.
Was this more of that game crap? Is that what it's about?
What it's about is telling the Tanctonese family that their father will not be home for the holidays. Any more questions?
What do you got, Pop? All right, I'll grab my coat.
No. It's a Tanctonese matter. Besides, you obviously have your own agenda.
So Matt goes to trail the loan shark alone, where he's seen handing a document to Tom Edison. Back at the station, George is about to apologize, but Matt says he doesn't need to.
Look, George, I don't want to ruin your holidays anymore, but...
So now George knows about Tom's involvement in the murders.
I have to get Tom back.
He's one of them.
Don't you see? They did it to him on the ship, and they're doing it to him again now.
George, Black is a human. He wasn't on the ship.
He's just bringing the players. He's out of control. It's an obsession. You play the game, you face death over and over again, and
Tom became addicted to the game. Matt asks if George ever played it.
Yes, I played. They made me play. I sat powerless, and I watched the others die.
Oh.
And then there was just one barrel left, and it was pointed at me, and they were cheering. They were cheering for me to die. And then the alarm sounded, and panic set in. There was no time to finish.
So if the ship hadn't landed when it did, George would have died along with the others who played.
It was my turn. It's not fair. It should have been me.
So yeah, Day of Descent isn't really a happy time for George.
Why am I alive? And Rutra is dead. I'm not going to let them win this time.
Later, George talks to Tom's wife.
There is a nightclub he's been frequenting. Alva found some credit card receipts. He's been acting very strange. She thinks Tom is having an affair.
If only.
When Tom gets here, we move.
George has some beads in his hand.
These are not rosary beads. These terras are a symbolic reminder of our liberation from enslavement and the freedom we now enjoy on our new planet. Each bead represents some aspect of Earth. Many of the newcomers carry these around holiday times. Emily made these for me.
Aww.
Susan and the children love the Descent holiday so.
Matt asks if he ever told Susan about the game.
How does one do that, Matthew?
So they were waiting for Tom to show up, and now that he's gone in, they follow.
Police, it's all over on the floor!
Except it was oil wrestling.
What the hell is this?
But George still confronts Tom.
You play for money. The game is taking your soul.
He is mine again.
He works for this really scary-looking newcomer whose disfigured hand we saw earlier. And now he's suing the police.
Sykes, we've got nothing on him.
Maybe not here, but where I come from, he is guilty of all.
Francisco, shut up.
Oh, Grazer.
Stania vot pimirev timsiku per spank, masa vot sikalisipish. Nas unso selstalal, vot jeffiti visvavut.
George tells Grazer that their intention was right, just the location was wrong.
He buses spectators to the game, where people are murdered for their viewing pleasure.
Captain, this is slander.
He is a murderer.
That is outrageous.
Fevrov sikenrud Stania. Nadlona gvuda vot ek, ikna vuda rutra.
Oh, that's the berserk button.
I will see you dead, Kulak. As of this moment, you are both off this case. Now get him out of here, Sykes.
Later, George is obviously frustrated about how powerless he feels.
Thank you. We're off the case, George. You're gonna have to be patient.
How many other innocent victims
I will not let him kill. I will not let him kill like he killed Rutra.
Matt tries to tell George that he can't save everyone and he needs to get a grip.
You gotta stop blaming yourself because you survived, because you got lucky.
And now we're about to find out why George is upset about that particular death.
You're just another newcomer whose time had come.
Rutra wasn't just another newcomer. He was my brother.
Oh.
I didn't know he was family. Sorry.
That lights a fire under Matt's ass, and now they're gonna go.
It's not your fight,
We're partners, George. Partners.
Partners. You guys are besties. Just own it.
You'll never know how much that means to me.
Well, okay, I didn't see that coming. Later that night, Matt wakes up. That must have been one hell of a punch. He stops by the Francisco house. Susan doesn't know where he went, but he left evidence behind. Meanwhile, George is sneaking into a building where Kulak is counting money and Tom is there too.
Get me 3 more. Next game's in 2 nights.
After they leave, someone spins the wheel.
Still trying to beat the law of averages, Stanja. Like your friend, the odds of losing will catch up to you.
I meant what I said, Kulak. I will see you dead.
Have you forgotten your position as an officer of the law?
Uh-oh, George isn't messing around.
I control you now like I controlled you when I brought your brother to play the game.
I love how he's so not worried about this, he just sits right in the chair.
But the cage bars that separated us then and the earth laws that separate us now no longer exist. You, me, and your law of averages. Who is next to sit at the table?
You will be a brave player.
But you will make for better sport.
Stanja, I'm going home.
Seriously, he thinks so little of George that his defenses are just completely down.
What is it you want?
I want to see what you're made of.
I do think it's a neat detail that the salt and the water are in 2 different chambers, so whatever newcomer sets up the machine doesn't have to worry about being exposed to salt water. Of course, it could also just be for the purpose of letting the audience know that it's definitely salt water. Anyway, he's playing the game with George, whether he likes it or not.
There is your chance to watch me die. But it is also my chance to watch you.
I will not play the game, Stanja.
Of course, he's refusing to play.
Push it.
I'm beginning to wonder if the steam hurts.
Can you see the faces of those you have murdered?
I assume they were just reacting to thinking it was the salt water for a second, but now I'm not so sure.
Can you hear their screams? Push it.
Like, I know steam can burn you, but it doesn't look like it's high-powered enough to do that. And now we're down to 2 nozzles.
Did your victim's eyes scream for mercy?
And George gets the steam.
Can you hear their voices calling you now?
Matt shows up but doesn't intervene right away. Imagine being forced to push that button when there's a 100% chance it's going to spray you with acid.
Come on, Butcher. Live the moment.
Oh, Stanja, no.
Push it.
No.
Then I will push it for you.
No. Jackson! No. No.
Stanja!
Except that George didn't plug in the salt chamber. Even though George didn't physically hurt this guy, he probably broke all kinds of rules here, but boy is it ever satisfying seeing an overseer reduced to a blubbering mess.
I want you to see their faces every day you rot in jail.
I couldn't fault George if I wanted to.
You're lucky you played the game with George.
Notice that George gives Tom his string of beads. Later, it's the final day of their holiday, and each of them is supposed to thank Earth for something.
I am beholden to the earth for our home.
I am beholden to the earth for freedom.
I am beholden to the earth for new friends.
I love how Matt just has his own spin on it.
Welcome to Earth. You sure make things interesting.
I am beholden to the earth for my family And for my husband, who can now celebrate the Day of Descent in peace.
I guess he did tell her at some point. And now it's George's turn.
I am beholden to Earth for our new life. Long may we celebrate Day of Descent. Long may we celebrate the Day of Liberation. Liberation.
Liberation. As Albert releases little Brian. And so ends the game. Wow, here I was calling Fountain of Youth dark, and then this episode comes along and makes it look like the Care Bears. Like, just when you think the idea of the slave ship couldn't get any more horrific, we find out that the overseers were essentially forcing the slaves to kill each other for fun and betting on the winner. I guess there were so many of them that they were just very expendable like that. There's a lot to unpack, but the aspect of it that sticks out to me is George's obvious PTSD and survival guilt. And of course, we find out that it was his brother. I think it's safe to assume a younger brother, who George felt he should have been able to protect. But he could only watch as his brother was dragged away, kicking and screaming, only to be dragged back as a corpse. Then he was supposed to die, but didn't, only because the ship had to land, a time that is supposed to be celebrated, but for George it only reminds him of how his brother died, and how he didn't. And of course, there's Tom Edison with his very dark addiction. Apparently he was just very lucky, and playing the game probably made him feel invincible in the moment. But whenever he's taking a break, he seems dead inside. I wish we knew what happened to him after this. I also wonder if the Overseers rigged him to win, since the game is more interesting with a reigning champion. Again, imagine messing with a person's head like that. There's a great quote in the book where a lady went up to Kenneth Johnson at a convention a week after it aired and said, "I really loved the game. It made me throw up." And she was serious. It was that intense. Also, according to producer Tom Chihak, Fox didn't want them doing flashbacks anymore after this episode because they were always fighting against the sci-fi aspects. They wanted us to lose the science fiction edge because they felt the science fiction audience is a limited one. Tell that to Star Trek. But yeah, most people agree that this is one of the best episodes. I have to talk about the actor who played Tom Edison because he was played by Sam Anderson, who is a very seasoned character actor, and I lost my shit when I recognized him in this. He's been in a million things. He delivered Phoebe's babies on Friends. He was in a few episodes of Angel. He was in Forrest Gump. Yeah, that guy. He's just been everywhere. So it was pretty cool seeing him play a newcomer. He did an amazing job in this dramatic role too. Not his first or anything, but I mostly know him from comedy. Kulak was played by Andreas Katsoulas, who was also in Babylon 5. I've never watched it, but I get a kick out of the fact that he's played more than one spotty-headed alien. Speaking of actors, this is the last episode where Jill actually shows up, even if she's just kind of in the background. According to IMDb, she's going to remain in the opening credits for 3 more episodes. I guess that's about all I have to say about this one. Next up is Chains of Love, which is an interesting one. See you then. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Here's some other videos you might be interested in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to further support my channel, there's also Patreon.
What is the problem with getting some fresh donuts around here? I cannot work with a belly full of stale donuts. I'm sorry.